features and benefits like membership rewards points and flexible payments. Don't do business without it. Terms apply. Learn more today at americanexpress.com/businesscards.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and sign up for Locked On Central.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to a free agency night edition of Locked On NBA. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. We are going to break down the winners and losers of the very first night, just a few hours into this, David, of NBA free agency. Let's just get right into it. Start with the winners. I think we have to start with the Miami Heat, right, David? I mean, you get Kyle Lowry, add PJ Tucker, Jimmy Butler signs his extension. You're pretty much hitting all the notes that you had hoped to hit if you were Miami.
Not only that, but you're also able to retain Duncan Robinson at a pretty decent deal. I mean, some reports that maybe he might be able to command as much as $25 million per year in the open market. They get him at a much cheaper rate than that. And he provides so much of their offense. He provides so much of a benefit to guys like Bam and Jimmy, who are not great shooters themselves. And then you add a guy like Lowry, who can space the floor, who can create opportunities. I think it's a fantastic addition. I know there are concerns about the age. Obviously adding Tucker, who's somewhat older, and Lowry, who was 35 years old, not exactly improving as far as the youth movement is concerned. But you add versatile defenders. I mean, that starting lineup, with the exception of Duncan, who I think has a bad reputation as a bad defender, I think overall that's a really, really great defensive unit. They're going to be holding opponents routinely to under 90 points per game. Even in today's NBA, that sounds ludicrous, but I think it might be possible.
I love the moves. I like the trio of Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo just makes a lot of intuitive sense, right? Like, Lowry, you and I have talked about this quite a bit. The issues with Miami is that point of attack defense has been a concern for them for a really long time, and that was something they tried to address last year by signing Avery Bradley. This is not Avery Bradley, right? This is a much more impactful type of addition. You expect Kyle Lowry to walk in right away, hold his own in that locker room, and provide that point of attack level of defense. He can space the floor. I don't know that offensively it's much more of an upgrade over Goran Dragic, but defensively it was. I think there's ripple effects across that lineup, right? Because with Miami, you were dealing with some sort of, you had two of Goran Dragic, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero on the floor most of all times, and none of those guys are really high-level defenders. Kyle Lowry is a high-level at that point guard position, and so I think that's going to help the rest of that lineup sort of click into place. There were reports that the Heat could be going after DeMar DeRozan. I think with that, there's some spacing issues, but that, as we're recording this, DeRozan's still a free agent. It doesn't look like the Heat have a real pathway to getting DeRozan unless he wants to take a huge discount and sign for some sort of mid-level exception type of money. But
there have been discussions about sign and trades with some of their former players, like Iguodala or maybe even Kendrick Nunn, in exchange for DeMar. But I'm not sure how realistic those are, as you mentioned. But they're also planning on adding, quality veterans, guys that are going to be chasing rings towards the tail end of their careers. I think that Miami may have set themselves up as perhaps a second-tier contender in the Eastern Conference.
Well, I think that's where we're at, right? Because I still think, look, after the Lowry signing, people were, okay, do they go after DeRozan now? But what they ended up following this up with PJ Tucker. We heard they were in on like a Bobby Portis type of deal. I think that would have been obviously plan A for them. But they get PJ Tucker, who could space the floor, right? He's a good three-point shooter out of the corners. Obviously can defend at a high level. Look, you're adding a lot of age to this roster, but with Lowry, a 3-year deal worth $90 million. Look, you pay it. This is a team operating well over the cap. It doesn't really matter. Now all we're talking about is Mickey Harrison's money. Who cares? But for PJ Tucker, I think this is a nice place filler at that 4 spot. Kind of gives them what Jay Crowder gave them that year where they had that run to the finals. That starting 5 makes a lot of sense to me. Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, Bam Adebayo, especially if Bam can start to stretch out his game. And if Jimmy Butler can bounce back from a really poor 3-point shooting year that he had last season and get back to, closer to his averages versus kind of a career low last year. But that to me makes a lot of sense. I still think they're a notch below Milwaukee and Brooklyn. who are not on our list of winners, but they didn't really need to be either. Like Milwaukee brought back Bobby Portis, Brooklyn brought back Blake Griffin. They're kind of standing pat, and they can afford to do that.
Right. No, I think that's spot on. Like, I mean, you can make a case for Philadelphia, maybe even Boston. I guess New York has made some moves. We'll talk about those later on. But, Miami's additions address a lot of the team's needs. And while, yes, they are perhaps overpaying for guys like Lowry and maybe even, Jimmy Butler, you worry about those years down the road. You don't have to think about that right now. You make a push to win now, and you hope for the best, and maybe you catch a break just like Milwaukee did this past season, and then maybe you find yourself somehow in the finals again, and maybe you have better luck this time around.
I've seen people question the Duncan Robinson extension, the 5 years, $18 million a year. It's like that's ridiculous. Look, that's what shooters go for now. Either you have them or you don't. Duncan Robinson is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. You can argue he's one of the best three-point shooters in the league. And that's just what it costs now. And people, either you get them or you don't get them. And that's it. All right, you mentioned the Knicks there. I kind of lumped the Knicks and the Nuggets together as winners because they just kind of kept their own guys and then made one big plus addition, right? So the Knicks, they bring back Derrick Rose, they bring back Nerlens Noel, Reggie Bullock, Alec Burks. All those guys have really good years for them. They bring them all back. Most of them are on 3-year deals, or all of them, I believe, are on 3-year deals, and they're able to keep some of this flexibility. All those salaries, by the way, easily like tradable. You can package together and make that move if they are going to be in on this Damian Lillard stuff later on, if that does indeed become a thing. And then Fournier, 4 years, maybe an overpay, but you get an addition there, and you fill an area of need, which was on the wing for them. And then with the Nuggets, same similar deal, right? They bring back Will Barton, they bring back Austin Rivers, they bring back JaMychal Green, and then they go out and add a Jeff Green. Again, a position of need, a guy who can kind of unlock some flexible lineups for them, can play the 4, can even play some small ball 5 for them. I liked what the Knicks and the Nuggets did. They would have loved to make that all-star type of acquisition if that were available to them, mostly in a trade. That's not out there right now. So they bring back their own guys off of 2 relatively successful seasons and then make a big addition.
The problem with the Nuggets this past year wasn't their roster; it was injury. I think we saw that pretty clearly with missing Jamal Murray for most of the season, where they took a lot of the wind out of their sails, and so you kind of double down. And I think that was expected, and they held to that plan. They made a nice addition in Green, as you mentioned. So I think when you have an MVP like Jokic there, you can afford to not really make any kind of radical change. I think that was the right move for them. You get the right team there. To bring back JaMychal Green, I think is a nice move also. So for Denver, I really like what they were able to do, even if it wasn't all that flashy. New York, similarly, I think the difference is that they didn't have the same kind of success. They don't have the same kind of ceiling, in my opinion, as Denver does. They don't have a Jokic on that roster. And as great as Julius Randle is, you're kind of trying to just build around that core. You bring back Rose, you add Evan Fournier, who's a decent player. He struggled a little bit at Boston, mostly because of COVID-19. But for the most part, it's an opportunity to prove that you are the playoff team that we saw last year and for most of the regular season in order to lock in that 4th seed of the Eastern Conference. And so you kind of just move forward knowing that there are other options down the road. It's a smart move. And look, considering what the Knicks have been like over the past few years, I think this is a definite step in the right direction.
I think what you just said about the Knicks was really, really positive about the Knicks. But the one thing that's going to get you crushed in your mentions is the fact that you said that Julius Randle isn't as good as Nikola Jokic. It's absolutely true. But you're gonna Knicks fans they're just gonna take that one out and be like, what are you talking about, man? He's an MVP. Chicago Bulls, I have them as a winner. I don't think they blew the doors off of free agency, but this wasn't really a free agency period that lent itself to have its doors blown off. You know what I mean? But They go out, make a quality addition in Lonzo Ball, certainly an upgrade at that point guard spot. And then they double down and say, you know what? Let's get 2 guys. Let's go after Alex Caruso. And now if you're Chicago, you've got Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Zach LaVine. I don't know if you start all 3. I don't know what you do there as far as lineups are concerned, but that doesn't really matter. You just needed, if you were Chicago, bodies, right? And you made the Vucevic deal at the trade deadline last year. You're starting to sort of iron out some of these weaknesses they had, specifically in that backcourt. You can kind of see the outline of maybe a fringe playoff team in the Eastern Conference now.
I think that's fair. mean, you've got two all-star level talents, and from there, you kind of, if you could build around the fringes, and I don't think that's anywhere close to assessing what Lonzo Ball is actually able to bring to the table. But Caruso, my concerns about him are, things that we've seen in the past from guys that have benefited playing alongside LeBron James. And maybe Caruso's game's a little different in that regard, and that maybe he can stand out on his own and he's able to hold his own when he was playing alongside LeBron. But most of the time you remove those guys from LeBron's side and they don't play nearly as well. So that seems like a slight overpay, but maybe he's got enough determination given his background and everything else where he wants to prove that this isn't just another paycheck for him. So we'll see how it pans out. But look, I mean, LaVine and
Alex Caruso is walking to Chicago as the dude with championship experience. Let's just remember that right now. Like, he's that influx into that locker room.
That's sad. That's sad because he does not strike me as the kind of guy who can carry a locker room like that. Because he is, after all, Alex Caruso. I don't think he's got tenacity or whatever and spunk, but I don't know if that's necessarily
that you're looking for.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to go into a locker and say, "All right, guys, this is my guy to winning a title." So, play with LeBron James. That's usually a good first step. How about that?
I like the additions because I don't know that the Bulls needed a true point guard, right? Like, Lonzo Ball has sort of found this world where he's a point guard in transition, but kind of a wing in the half court. Defensively, I know he's polarizing. There's length there. He's smart. He does good things on that end. He's not a negative by any stretch. Caruso, another guy who could just sort of, fit certain lineups, play his role, willing to do all like that kind of stuff. Then you have LaVine in there, is obviously going to be your leading scorer, but can also play make a little bit, right? We saw him turn the corner a little bit last year. Vucevic is obviously a playmaker from the center spot. I like the idea of having like this mixy, versatile, rangy lineups that everybody's ball handlers, everybody's switching, everybody's shooting. You could be a little unpredictable. I don't know. I like the way the Bulls roster is starting to come along. I'm not saying that they're going to beat Brooklyn or Milwaukee or even Miami based on these recent moves. I just like what they're doing. I think they're going to be much better than this next year than they were last year because they just went out and said, this is what we need to do. And they went ahead and did it twice.
Now we should point out that they do lose Daniel Tice in a sign and trade to Houston, and they also lost Tomas Satoransky in the Lonzo Ball deal. Garrett Temple also goes to the Pelicans. So some quality depth there. They still have Thad Young. They didn't wind up losing him. So I think that's, I'm not sure if they're quite a winner, but they're not quite a loser either. So I can see your point.
I like them more than you do, apparently. I still have no idea what to make of the Lakers. Let's talk about that next, David. But first, let's tell them about Rock Auto.
Well, you never have to doubt a company that's been around for 2 decades, a family-owned business that's been serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Look, you can go to a chain storefront. They can find the parts that you might be looking for, maybe if they happen to carry them in their warehouse, but all they're going to do is look it up on the computer. Why bother going through that when you've got access to computers on your phone or at home, which means you've got access to rockauto.com. Why spend more for the exact same parts at a chain store or even worse at a car dealership? rockauto.com's low prices are the same for everybody. So go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car and truck, then go to the section that says, how did you hear about us? And write the phrase locked on so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com.
I'm Barbara, and I'm a CalCoast member. I was in a tough place. I had a lot of credit card debt. That was 6 years ago. My sister, when I told her my story, she says, we're going to CalCoast Credit Union, and we're getting your act together. CalCoast has changed my life. And ever since then, it's been such a wonderful experience.
Get an affordable mortgage with a zero closing cost home loan from California Coast Credit Union. And get the CalCoast Advantage. Visit calcoastcu.org to apply. Some restrictions apply. Equal housing lender.
This segment was recorded before the news that the Warriors signed Otto Porter Jr. to a minimum contract. Obviously a good get for Golden State. Porter will help fill a need on the wing, and they still have their mid-level exception to address other team needs. Let's move now to the losers in NBA free agency. And David, I honestly have no idea what to make of the Los Angeles Lakers. Are they winners? Are they losers? We already know about the Russell Westbrook stuff. They were quite active in the opening hours of free agency. They signed Wayne Ellington, Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard, and Kent Bazemore. They lose Alex Caruso, who we just talked about, to Chicago. If it's just a numbers game, I guess they're winners, right? Like, look, I don't think any of the players they signed are as good as Caruso, but Bazemore had a really strong finish to the season last year in Golden State. Wayne Ellington will provide some much-needed spacing after making the Russell Westbrook deal. I actually thought Ellington for a long time made a lot of sense there. This is a guy in Wayne Ellington who idolizes Kobe Bryant, has a Kobe Bryant tattoo, wears Kobe's shoes on the court. Kind of always made sense. He might start as shooting guard for them, just for floor spacing. And so Trevor Ariza could start at the forward spot, could sort of maybe fill in that Shane Battier role if you're playing LeBron and Anthony Davis down a position, if Anthony Davis finally buys into playing the 5 full time. And they bring Dwight Howard back. So that was nice. But they lose JaVale McGee. Or they already lost JaVale McGee 2 years ago. But what do you make of the Lakers free agency? Like, are they winners? Are they losers? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think Lakers fans know, or Lakers media. I don't think they know what to do. I think, it's this unfortunate side of it. And look, I should qualify this and say that even as we're rating winners and losers, this seems as pointless almost as rating winners and losers on draft night when you have no idea how these players are going to turn out. You don't know what the fit is going to be like. Well, Westbrook's not going to change, but maybe playing alongside a guy like LeBron, something he's never done. He's never played alongside a guy like this. He's played alongside unique, otherworldly scorers in Harden and Durant, but not the kind of playmakers that a playmaker like LeBron. And so we don't know how that fit's going to work out. I think it's going to go well. And if that's the case, then you make these moves on the fringes to bring in guys that are familiar either with playing alongside LeBron in Dwight Howard's case, or guys that have been former Lakers like Ellington and Ariza. I think it makes sense. They're not going to shy away from the moment. They're looking to capitalize on the Lakers' strengths, their depth. They're going to compete for a title. We already know that's the case. I mean, any other season, I think the Lakers would have been right in the title hunt too. But this was the strangest season in NBA history, so you can't really make that case. But other than that, I think you're building a team here, and I think it's a fine move. I don't say it's great. I don't think they're losers, but I don't. Maybe I'm kind of on the fence the same way I was about Chicago. But I don't dislike their moves, but I'm also not sure exactly how it's going to pan out.
I'm higher on the Russell Westbrook thing than most people. I'm not exactly sure why. It just feels better. I don't know. I like the idea.
I've always been a pad chaser. A stat pattern. I think that's what it is.
I have always been a stat pattern. That's how I approach everything in life. So that makes sense.
It's all about the triple doubles with you, man. Always.
So look, I like the idea of adding a guy like Westbrook. Not necessarily for the playoffs. I think there might be some diminishing returns there, but at that point, but in the regular season, I think that having a guy like Westbrook to take some of the brunt off of guys like LeBron and Anthony Davis will be helpful, especially because, why did the Lakers lose in the playoffs this year? It wasn't because of lack of talent. It was because they weren't healthy and because LeBron and AD were beaten down by that point. So a long offseason, adding a guy like Westbrook who could be relentless for 82 games allows LeBron and AD to maybe sit back a little bit. But that was the idea last year, right, with getting Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell, and we didn't really see, LeBron got hurt. So that's definitely part of it, but I never got the sense even when LeBron was playing that he's like, oh, hey, I could just sort of cede the controls to guys like Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell. Theoretically, I get it, but we have yet to see that in practice, right? LeBron's been talking about maybe taking a back seat for 5 years now, it seems like.
At least.
He never does. And, but we'll see. But I think the volume of guys, adding a guy, I thought they actually missed Dwight Howard last year. His rebounding in lineups next to Anthony Davis, AD doesn't have to do it, is important. Bazemore, Ellington, Ariza, all those guys are shooters. I don't think Wesley Matthews has signed anywhere yet, so I think they could still bring him back. It's just, look, none of these guys are Ray Allen. None of these guys are Kyrie Irving, right? None of these guys are some of the three-point shooters that LeBron has played with before, but neither was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, right? He was their best three-point shooter last year. I don't think anybody's treating Kentavious Caldwell-Pope like Klay Thompson, right? So these are just some good shooters that they're going to surround around LeBron with, and usually that's enough. It's just all about how the rest of them work together. Let's move on from the Lakers, and I think we talked enough about them. Losers, straight up losers. Let's start with the Warriors. This was a team that approached the draft and said, you know what? Let's just take a big swing at number 7 here with Jonathan Kuminga. He's not going to be able to play for us right away. We understand that because we don't want to pick here again. We don't have a star of the future. All right, cool. Do that. Whatever. At number 14, you take Moses Moody. Who knows what to make of a number 14 pick? I'm not going to overreact or underreact to that. I don't care. But Bob Myers came out and told us that hey, free agency is going to be where we determine whether or not, and how Klay Thompson looks when he comes back, but also free agency, that's going to determine whether or not we get back to where we want to be, which is the playoffs, which is something they haven't done in 2 years. They have done nothing in the opening hours of free agency. As we're recording this, they have yet to make a signing. Kent Bazemore left. He's with the Lakers now. We just talked about that. They had a number of the guys that they had been rumored to be interested in, the guys like Trevor Ariza, other guys have signed elsewhere. Wayne Ellington, they've signed elsewhere. They have yet to make a move. I don't know what's out there. If it's as simple as, hey, let's just bring Andre Iguodala back, I don't think that's enough. There's some names. Patty Mills hasn't signed at the time of us recording this, unless the alert that I got. No. Is that enough? Like, those are names that they've been targeting. Nick Batum was another guy that they wanted. He re-signed with the Clippers. I mean, I just don't know where the Warriors go.
Right?
And look, Kelly Oubre's gone, man. Like, I find it hard to believe that they're going to resign unless they get so desperate that they say, you know what, we'll give you $17 million a year, whatever it's going to take. We'll give you the Evan Fournier contract to come back. I just don't see them doing that based on where their finances are and some of the recent comments by Joe Lacob. It doesn't sound like they want to go that much deeper into the tax.
I mean, it's pretty telling. I don't know if you saw this being reported right now, but from Shams Charania of The Athletic, apparently Bazemore turning down more money from the Warriors to sign with the Lakers. So, I mean, clearly he sees the Lakers as closer to contention, I guess, than the Warriors. So I think that's how a lot of people view the Warriors right now. They're in a tough place. I mean, you know this better than anybody, but obviously simultaneously looking to compete and also retooling and rebuilding at the same time. So that's a tough place. I guess it scares off
more money in years from the Warriors, but believes he'll have a bigger role and opportunity to win a championship with the Lakers. That's exactly the Warriors. That does not bode well for Golden State, right? They were betting on, hey, we've got Steph Curry who's in the MVP race, Draymond Green Defensive Player of the Year race. Come here, you can win a championship. But the Lakers are right there. Brooklyn's right there. Like, there are teams that are just better suited, and it just doesn't seem like the branding right now around Golden State is very good.
Has Golden State, like, not burned bridges around the league necessarily, but I mean, you kind of recall, what's this point guard name? The guy who shoved Chris Paul. I'm totally drawing a blank here. The Clippers guard, Patrick Beverley.
Patrick Beverley.
Yeah, like that reaction to the Warriors last year. Do you think that's around the league, that people are still upset at that team and the strength, the way they dominated for 5 years, that maybe they're not looking to add to that core there? I mean, I could see them bringing back a guy like Iguodala because he fits there, obviously, but around the league, I wonder if they're viewed much more negatively than we perceive.
I don't think it's that they're viewed negatively. I just think that they're old news. And this is why it's so hard to maintain a dynasty in the NBA if you're a big market team that basically tries to attract free agents. And look, I'll say this before I say anything else. It's a miracle that this is a team that has missed the playoffs two seasons in a row and has still been able to keep all of their stars, right? Like, Steph Curry is going to sign this extension. He's not demanding a trade. Klay Thompson's coming back. They still have Draymond Green. The only star that they lost, obviously, is Kevin Durant, but everybody saw that coming. So they've managed to keep their core three in place and have them coming back. So that's a win. Right away, they're winning. But this is why it's so hard to compete for so many years and basically be Spurs 2.0, which them and the other 29 teams in the league want to be, is because you become old news. And this is kind of, I guess, the genius of what LeBron's done is he's never old news. He keeps moving teams. And so it's like, hey, you know, it'd been one thing if he's like, hey, keep chasing championships with me in Cleveland or even Miami, but it's like he keeps moving around. And with the Lakers, they get the Russell Westbrook thing, and what happens? They get everybody. And Kent Bazemore looks at that situation like, who knows? If the Lakers don't trade for Russell Westbrook, maybe he looks at the situation as equal to the Warriors and says, hey, I was pretty good in Golden State this last year. I'll just re-up with more years. That wasn't the case. Kent Bazemore looked at the shiny new thing that was the Lakers and said, I'm going to go over there. So did Wayne Ellington. So did Trevor Ariza. So did Dwight Howard. I just think that the Warriors, and you look at what's going on in Brooklyn and Milwaukee just winning a championship, Miami making the big splashes. The Warriors are just old news. They've missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. You can tell me Steph Curry all day long, but there's stars everywhere else in the league too, right? And there's coastal elite teams everywhere in the league that are good now. You look at when the Warriors were at the height of their dynasty, the Lakers were no good. The Clippers were no good. The Knicks were no good. Brooklyn was rebuilding, irrelevant. Miami was coming off of their own dynasty and in a rebuild of sorts. Like, those coastal elite teams weren't any good when the Warriors were attracting DeMarcus Cousins and all these guys at the minimum.
Do they have a
but now
recruiter? do they have a recruiter, like a guy who has these kind of connections? My guess would be
Draymond is the guy.
Draymond. Yeah, and he's in Tokyo,
and look,
so maybe.
all this could be moot if they end up making a big Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal swing somewhere down the line.
Sure.
And that's probably what they're preparing to try to do. But that doesn't take away from the fact that you had to nail free agency regardless. And using your mid-level exception, your minimum contracts on helpful players doesn't keep you from making that all-star type of splash trade later on. So they've got to be losers right now because just their inability to do anything and honestly just losing out on some of these guys that they wanted. I think another team that has to be labeled as a loser right now are the Trailblazers. I understand that they didn't have that many options to make a big move. They brought back Norman Powell. They bring in Cody Zeller to replace Zach Collins, who went to San Antonio. Collins has more upside, but he's been injured his entire career, it feels like. Cody Zeller's probably better right now. But like, look, if you're going to Damian Lillard and say, look, we got you Cody Zeller, I don't think that's keeping him from demanding a trade by the time the regular season gets here.
No, absolutely not. I mean, your job is on the line. Everybody's job is on the line. This team and everything that we know about it is going to be blown up unless they make the right kind of move. And yeah, you're right. I mean, they didn't have a lot of options, but this is how somehow. Look, I know it sounds somewhat homerish, but I think everybody discounted Miami this year. They discounted Miami 2 years ago when they acquired Jimmy Butler. Somehow that front office always manages to find very creative ways. And I know I can already hear 80% of the listeners saying, oh, but it's big markets. It's like, you know what? There is no big market. And don't give me that, oh, they get income tax taken off there. They don't have to worry about that. You know what? Orlando doesn't pay income tax either. State income tax, that is. And guess what? They're not luring free agents there either. So this is about an organization that's run poorly, and that's, I think, pretty blatantly clear when it comes to the Portland Trailblazers. They just don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to use their cap creatively. They don't know how to lure the big names there. You overpay for a player, then you can't get rid of that contract. And I think Powell's a fine player. I think everybody can agree to that. But I think the amount of money that you pay him makes that contract not unmovable, very difficult, where you have to throw in additional assets in order to clear some of that space there. So you kind of shoot yourself in the foot yet again. And when you're trying to impress your once in a lifetime type superstar in Lillard, this isn't going to get it done. So I don't know what they're doing there.
What's the point?
They were probably going to be losers no matter what.
Sure.
But that means they're losers. All right, let's talk about some of our other losers in free agency next, but first tell them about BetOnline.
Well, if you want to bet on Portland's chances next season, then go to BetOnline, the fastest and the easiest
You
way.
can short them.
To bet on all your sports action. Baseball season's still in full swing. You can track all the action at BetOnline, get all the latest news and odds and info on all your sporting needs, including Major League Baseball, the NBA, of course, the NHL, and all your UFC MMA action. Before the next pitch, head over to BetOnline on your laptop or mobile device. Check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. This is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts, and don't forget to use that promo code LOCKEDON.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive. Progressive helps you get a great rate on car insurance, even if it's not with them. They have this nifty comparison tool that puts rates side by side, so you choose a rate and coverages that work for you. So, let's say you're interested in lowering your rate on your car insurance. Visit Progressive.com to get a quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's rate, and then their tool will provide options from other companies, all lined up and easy to compare, so that all you have to do is choose the rate and coverages you like. Progressive gives you options so you can make the best choice for you. You could be looking forward to saving money in the very near future. More money for, say, a pair of noise-canceling headphones, an Instapot, more puzzles, whatever brings you joy. Get a quote today at Progressive.com. It's one small step you can do today that could make a big impact on your budget tomorrow. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Gas update. So, yesterday, I was at 253 miles to half a tank. To half of a tank. And I've been telling you something about the Views fucking gas reader. It plummets after half. So 253 at the half yesterday when I was at the same exact point. We're at 308 and we're under a quarter. Same old bullshit. And if I was to refill when I get home after work today, I'd probably have only used 12 gallons instead of 15 gallons. I think I'm gonna, well, we'll see. We'll see how this goes, but yeah.